Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to Toe Tags Metal Reviews, and today we're giving you guys our first impressions of the new albums and EP from Omnium Gatherum, Gloryhammer, and Avenged Sevenfold. So I said albums and EP. One of these three things that we're covering today is an EP, and it is called Slasher by Omnium Gatherum. This is what I started my day with, and I think it's pretty good. We covered this band once before for their last album. It was a while ago. I remembered the album art when I was looking at it, but I didn't quite remember what they sounded like. So I kind
Did
of...
we actually cover the album on the channel?
We may have.
I think we listened to it, but I don't think we actually covered it.
It might have been just in a first impression.
What was it called again?
I forgot. All I remember...
You looked it up and you know.
I looked at... Look, based on the other stuff I heard today, I think that took up a lot more of the brain space.
Okay.
You know
so
what
did
I
you think of Slasher?
It was pretty cool. Honestly, like, coming into almost a clean slate for this band, it was more melodic than I felt like I recalled. Like, I'm like, okay, I think I remember what these guys sounded like. I'm listening to it, I'm like, okay, this is way more melodic than I recall. But it's probably not. That's probably par for the course for this band.
Yeah, I think
and
so.
I just misremembered. I don't know about you, but the harsh vocals and some of the guitar riffs kind of reminded me of Amon Amarth.
Yes.
Specifically, the harsh vocals
Yes.
sounded a lot like the Amon Amarth vocals.
Yep.
But kind of like as a whole, to me, it kind of sounded like a less technical Scar Symmetry. With the way that they use their synths, with the way they use their melodies, it's like you take Scar Symmetry, make them less technical, and probably maybe a bit slower, and you get this, which I think is pretty cool, because then you get something that is already pretty cool, and then just essentially an alternative version of that, you know?
Yeah.
There's a cover on this EP of Maniac, an old school 80s song, and I was thinking like, wait, what? And as it started, I'm like, wait a minute, that song? What the fuck?
And it's well done too.
Yeah, it's well done. What's really cool about covers like that is that it takes a song and just creates an entire new spin on it.
Yeah.
And it's really cool when bands reinvent a song and pretty much make it their own and do a completely alternative version on it like that.
Yeah, it's a 1983 song by Michael Sembello. That song was actually nominated for a Golden Globe and an Academy Award.
Did it win?
Or something like that. I don't think it won, but still, just to show you like kind of the caliber of the song.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure it's been covered many times as well, but I think this version of it hits pretty hard. It's fast, it's got a lot of goal energy, really nice guitaring going on. It's got a classical feel to it, virtuosic, classical, very technically proficient sounding song. The EP is pretty short though. It's 18 minutes. It's only 4 tracks, which I guess is EP.
I guess it's
EP.
It's an EP.
EP world. But I enjoyed it. Yeah, you said some things that I agree with as well. I think if this was a full-length LP, it would have some potential to be pretty solid. So yeah, I like what these guys brought to the table today. A little bit sad that it was only an EP because I like what I heard. So
yeah. Looking forward to whatever they got coming in the future.
Yeah.
Return to the Kingdom of Fight by Gloryhammer. Now, this is a band I've heard of, but I haven't really checked out myself, and the names of these songs, tracks, and albums is ridiculous. The last track's full title for the last track. This is the full title. Maleficus Geminus, and then in brackets, Colossus Matrix 38B, Ultimate Invocation of the Binary Thaumaturge.
Yeah, I didn't write the brackets part. Didn't feel necessary.
That's the full title of the last track. And just reading these, like, what the fuck?
It's a 12-minute long song, though. So
it is. It's the big epic closer.
It's the big epic closer. How did you feel about it? Since we're on the topic, how did you feel about that closer?
I thought it was a good song. Like, I enjoyed it. A big epic. One cool thing that is throughout this album, which is pretty clearly a concept album from everything about it. I like the points where they kind of have the talking of like some evil guy and the singer's kind of singing his retaliation like it's kind of like a musical.
Yeah.
And this might be weird, but listening to this album, it's like as if you took Wooden Leg, like the Wooden Leg saga by Ailstorm, and took it seriously.
Yeah.
You take that kind of adventure and actually make it like a serious thing, because Ailstorm is kind of a jokey band. So you take it seriously, you kind of get what this band sounds like. That's what I got. And man, there's a lot of cool stuff in this album as well. Like, very entertaining, very exciting, very fun. I had a lot of fun listening to it. There's a lot of moments where it's like, yeah, this is cool.
I did too. I definitely see the Ailstorm comparison too, but I think that's just a genre. I think that's just power metal genre. They have, they share a genre. So you get one band that does power metal but with jokey lyrics and one that does more serious lyrics. Mm-hmm. But even serious, like you have a song called Wasteland Warrior Hoots Patrol. To me, that just sounds funny, even if it is supposed to be serious. I don't know.
That song in particular has a saxophone solo.
Exactly. There's all kinds of stuff sprinkled in here, which is also really cool. For me, I feel like as entertaining as this album is, it still kind of falls in this run-of-the-mill kind of pocket of like, it kind of just sounds like that typical power metal that you're familiar with. Even when listening to it today at work, the guy said, "Hey, are you listening to Sabaton?" And I was like, "No." And he goes, "Oh, okay. Well, it kind of sounds like this Sabaton song." And he puts on a song, and it sounded a lot like what I was listening to on this Gloryhammer album. So the parallels are there. You'll kind of hear that, but they do have kind of their own taste in ways. Like you mentioned, the saxophone solo, those things, or saxophone part, whatever it is. Those things add character that you might not hear in other bands that are sounding similar. The song that I just mentioned, Wasteland Warrior Hoots Patrol, to me that almost sounded like old school video game music, like F-Zero soundtrack or something like that. Like, I was picturing, for some reason, playing video games through a lot of this album. It sounded like old school. It sounded like Nintendo music, but not like 8-bit.
Yeah.
Right? It sounded like modern.
Like an arrangement of old school Nintendo.
Yeah, something like that. That's what I was getting about it, because a lot of it's very battle orientated, which is, that's what you do in video games. You fight bad guys. Right? So very battle orientated, or oriented, and just overall a fun album.
Yeah.
Fun, entertaining album.
It was quite a fun one. So, Life is But a Dream by Avenged Sevenfold. Now, this is the first time we've actually covered an album from this band on our channel. We unfortunately missed the boat for The Stage, which came out in 2016.
Just before we started the channel.
Just before we started the channel, yeah. So I'm glad that we finally get the chance to check them out now. There were 2 singles. We only checked out one of them, and that was Nobody.
What was the other one? I didn't know they had 2
We
singles.
Love You. We got a few people requesting it, but we missed the boat.
Okay.
Oops. But, I might be misremembering how I felt about Nobody, but I recall feeling a little bit iffy on the song in our reaction. I could be wrong, but listening to it today, that song is actually really cool. And I think it especially helps in context of the album that it's kind of a slower break from faster songs. Mm-hmm. And it just has this cool drive to it. And I really like all the layering of melodies on top of each other as well really gives it a lot of depth. Yeah. And that's really cool. But this album, I feel like your first experience with this album, if you don't know what to expect, is gonna kind of take you on a big roller coaster ride. Because this album is full of crazy ideas, constant changing of stuff, twists and turns all over the place, and you get some songs you think like, what the hell is this? What's going on? There's a song called Ordinary. Straight up sounds exactly like a Daft Punk song. And if you asked me before I put on this album, what are you expecting? A Daft Punk song is one of the last things I would have told you, because that was just out of nowhere. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, sorry. Just to give you guys an idea of how vast the switch can be, 2 tracks before that, I don't know about you, to me sounded like Alice in Chains or Soundgarden. Like,
oh, was it Beautiful Morning?
No, Easier.
Oh, I wrote that Beautiful Morning sounds like Alice in Chains during the verses. So it's funny that we both thought Alice in Chains.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. So you got. My point is, it's like grunge era, but also with some auto-tune parts. And then I can't remember what track 8 sounded like. I didn't have any notes for it. That was G, right? But then track 9, I did the same thing. I wrote Daft Punk, synthwave.
Yeah, G actually has some female vocals in it, which is pretty interesting. That's another spice thrown into this.
And I also did try to look up who that was, but I didn't find an answer. So if you know in the comments, let us know, because I'm curious.
So like this album has a lot of songs that'll introduce a riff or an idea, and then 180 to something else, and then it'll eventually come back to that first thing. It'll create a form, but the sections within that form are so different from each other.
Yeah.
Like naturally you'd think in a regular musical form that you're gonna have sections that are similar enough or kind of in the same key, but this is like almost jumping to a different song and then jumping back to the original song. But the transitions are actually pretty good. Yeah. And for example, the riff for We Love You after We Love You has this drum intro, and then this riff comes in and it's like, oh, this is something completely different than I would have expected after this drum groove. But there's another thing I want to mention with this album is M. Shadows' voice. And I think we may have mentioned this in the reaction to Nobody, but his voice sounds strained. Like when he goes,
sound strained. It is strained. I think it's evident.
In the higher registers, it really sounds like he's struggling, and it's just like. But in the mid to low registers, sounds fine. Harshes sound fine, but when he goes up there, it's just. it's a little bit tough to hear.
Just to piggyback off that, it's true. His voice is strained. His voice is shot. He's not singing like he used to sing. I personally love it how it sounds right now. And I think the reason why is because he now has a natural harshness to his voice. Like, you listen to metal and all these singers are doing a harsh vocal. They're modifying their voice to be harsh. He's doing it naturally now, and to me that just sounds so fucking cool. It's so raw. It doesn't sound like it used to. It's missing a spark, but now it's got a new kind of spark. And for me, it was just working, and I'm so happy that it was working for me, because I am the kind of guy that would go, that sounds too raw, it sounds too sour for me, I don't like it. Mm-hmm. For me, I didn't have that feeling. I'm really glad I did it.
Yeah, honestly, that's huge for like that experience, to not kind of have issues with it. Then you can just enjoy the song entirely. Like, I feel like, listening to this album more probably wouldn't bug me as much, but hearing it like the first time, I'm just like, ooh.
Yeah, and it's not even about not having issues, it's about actually liking it. Like, I'm listening to going, fuck, I like that. There's a rasp there that's just like, ooh, chef's kiss.
I will say it contributes to the uniqueness of this album.
It does.
What sounds like this album? Like, nothing. This album does like a million different things, and it kind of sounds like everything.
I'll contest you on that, because this reminded me a lot of Avatar. We've covered Avatar several times on this channel. We're probably way more familiar with Avatar than we are with Avenged Sevenfold, even though Avenged Sevenfold came out way before Avatar. To me, I'm listening to this, I'm going, this sounds like Avatar. This sounds like a song Avatar would do, or this sounds like the kind of styling Avatar would do, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. So I do think there are bands out there that do kind of have this style of like kind of just throwing everything at the fan and seeing what sticks. This album has a lot of stuff going on. As TV Fish was mentioning, it starts off like the opening track, Game Over. Odd name for a beginning track, for one. Sounds like post-thrash. It's very thrashy. Mm-hmm. But to me, it almost sounded like if Queen was a thrash band. Like, and that's not the only time I heard like a Queen like reminder in this band. But then you got that. Then you got
Mattel.
Well, I'm kind of going through like different genres that I'm hearing. Okay, so thrash. Then We Love You starts off with like a pretty cool drum intro, syncopated. Then it goes into a house style, like a house beat style groove with EDM style vocal phrasing, and it's very progressive through the rest of the song. You got songs that are ballads. We mentioned the grunge stuff. We mentioned the Daft Punk synthwave stuff. There's a song, track number 10 is called Death. This reminded me of like barbershop quartet kind of style, right? Or like traditional pop. It reminded me of the Chordettes who sing that song, Mr. Sandman, if you know that song. And then the last song is basically piano lounge music.
Yeah, the title track is just 4.5 minutes of piano, which is a really cool way to end an album, which reminds me of the most recent, I guess it's not really recent at this point, the last Flesh God Apocalypse album, The Leno, which came out, I believe, 2019. The last track, which was the title track, was just piano, but I think it was a lot shorter. But in this case, 4.5 minutes, and it's like, wow, it's just a full piano piece. That's really cool and creative. Like, they do so many different things. You wouldn't expect it to end with, a big piano song. The end. There were a few points where I honestly felt like during this album, where I honestly felt like I was listening to Dream Theater, with how technical some of the music got with the riffs and the syncopation. I'm like,
guitaring's crazy.
Yeah, it really felt like I was listening to something like Dream Theater. There were some points where they use a vocoder on him shouting his voice. That was cool. It only happened like twice or so. Just overall, lots of different stuff going on. Like, it's the kind of album where on a first impression, I have a huge chunk of notes. And that's how you know an album has a lot of things that are just noteworthy.
A lot of potential. Yeah, I feel like on my first impression, I'm very impressed and interested more than I thought it would be. My problem with it, on a first impression, is that I feel like it falls off in the second half. I feel like it's really strong in the first half, falls off in the second half. But that's something that we will have to put to the test through a week's worth of listening.
Yep, this week we are going to choose this album to review, and we're going to be listening to it constantly throughout the week. And next week we will be giving you guys our final review of Life is But a Dream. Anyway, guys, that's all we got for you today. Remember to like this video if you liked it. Comment, tell us in the comments below, what do you think of all the albums that came out today? We'd love to hear what you guys have to say, and subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. I'm TV Fish.
And I'm Wild Self.
And keep the horns up.